But the hammer Mjolnir hit Hrungnir right in the head and crushed his skull in small pieces. He himself fell forward over Thor so that his foot lay upon Thor's neck. Hey everyone, Yoistin here, and I hope you all are doing well, wherever you are in Midgard. Today we are back with another Norse video on why Thor and the giants had such enmity and hatred between each other, even though Thor himself was part giant. This conflict between the gods and giants has always been interesting to me, and has been portrayed in many different ways through games, shows, and movies over the years, sometimes portraying the giants as victims or perpetrators, or something of a neutral force. But I'm excited to get into the mythology of it all. Sources will be in the description. My friends, thank you all for joining me today. Let's begin our tale. Starting with Thor himself, he was the son of Odin and Jord, the Earth, who herself was a giantess. Again, Thor is half giant, half Aesir god, even though he's technically counted among the Aesir, especially as one of the most powerful, the strongest certainly, and one of the main gods. But even though he and many other gods had some sorts of giant ancestry or familial ties to giants, he still counted himself differently, as did all the Aesir, away from the giants. So it's important to remember that in Norse mythology, the gods came through the realms and established order, ruling from Asgard, and really it's they and their aspects, the parts of nature that they rule over, that maintain order in the 9 realms. But the giants are kind of almost the exact opposite. They are primordial beings of chaos, and different sorts of usually elemental chaos, whether it's frost, fire, or something else. And so they weren't so much as evil as they were cosmic opposition. And so since they were this destructive, chaotic wild side, and the gods represented more of this orderly sort of side, even though, let's be honest, they themselves in some of their stories were chaotic, it really stood that that was the biggest conflict between them, and Thor had the role as being the defender of the gods and humans and so forth. He had Mjolnir, which was kind of made for fighting against the giants and so forth, that set him apart from even those among his own kindred. And so sometimes it is important to remember that the giants, even though they were usually chaotic or, again, parts of this cosmic chaos become corporeal, they did sometimes join with the Aesir or partner up with them. They weren't always in opposition to the Aesir, but many of them definitely were. And if we're taking this from the giants' side, it is also important to remember that Odin used Ymir's body to help create the world and scattered its different pieces and so on and so forth. Perhaps the giants carried some ancient grudge of all of that, which caused problems throughout the rest of the history between the Aesir and the giants. And so Thor was the champion of the gods. He was the one to fight the giants because it wasn't so much of a problem for him to do so, all except one giant, one great creature, the world serpent Jormungandr. And so, even regardless of this though, we'll come back to Jormungandr in a second, it always seems like myths portray Thor as battling or trying to trick the Jotnar, the giants, whether it's Hrungnir, Geirrod, Hymir, Thrym, or others. And again, he kind of was this physical force of a barrier between order and chaos, even though he, in part, if we're saying the giants were chaos, at least, according to their nature, he was also chaotic. And again, that definitely makes sense for who he is as a character in mythology. And so he was always their greatest enemy, and perhaps that was also the part of himself, part of his arc as this mythological character to fight the chaos within himself, but he was always kind of that main villain for the Jotnar, for the giants. And so he has to suppress that nature and give into his more Aesir godly nature, listening to Odin and carrying out the will of the gods, even if it were against his other people, the giants. And so why did Thor hate the giants? It's kind of because he was the champion of those who more or less opposed the giants entirely. Their order against the giants is chaos. The order of the Aesir, I should say. And so he had to be their champion, he had to represent them, and being the strongest of the gods. Perhaps it's also because Thor probably liked to fight, and the giants were really one of the only ones worth fighting that actually stood any chance against Thor at all, especially because the Aesir had made peace with the Vanir gods. And so, with that being said, Thor dies killing perhaps one of the greatest giantish creatures, Jormungandr. They slay each other in Ragnarok. Thor slays it, and then its venom slays him. And so these giants, and many of them, acted as the anti-gods in many ways, almost like the Titans in Greek mythology. So I would say that's really our answer, is giants as this embodiment of chaos, with the gods being this embodiment of somewhat of an order being brought to the realms, and Thor had to be the champion of the gods against that disorder. So it's also definitely something that he seemed to like doing, because he was strong, he was a warrior, so he liked to fight. So there we go. From this tale, we see that order and chaos usually remain in opposition, especially throughout mythology, and it's about finding the balance between the two for true prosperity. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this insight into more Norse mythology. I hope you all are okay with how often I'm releasing on this channel. It's fun to do, but definitely takes some time and energy, so let me know what you'd like to see next, and hopefully I'll be able to get to that in a few weeks. Leave a like if you enjoy, and make sure to subscribe and share this video to help out the channel. Thank you all for joining me on this adventure. Until the next one.